Itagat ko kenyitab Kalenjin ketestai ak tetutiet noton nemite soet en Kass TV kuyo komwaun eng tai komakibe komung'et ko kimitei ak CEO anan ofisa neo eng kibagengeitab Kenya National Qualifications Authority inendet ko Dr. Alice Kandie netesetai kwarorwech kotinygei ak boisionik chebo kibagengeinito kikitoi eng kenyitab 2015 ole agoi nguni ko kikobois eng kasarta nebo kenyisiek cheite 10 kobate chang kelchinoik chekikomuch konyor icheket chekikotoret mising eng kanaptaetab somanet noton nebo barak ak somanet noton nebo kwen eng emetab Kenya. Ko kitesetai ak Dr. Alice Kandie eng kebeberta nebo aeng. Dr. Alice Kandie, karibu sana, tuendelee on the second part of this interview. Before we broke for the interview, you were telling me about the mandate and how you do the qualifications thing in Kenya, working collaboratively with other organizations in Kenya and in abroad. So what have you achieved so far?
Thank you, Bernard. Once again, what have we achieved since the enactment of the Kenya National Qualifications Framework Act? Allow me to begin by saying that one of the critical functions of the authority, again, is to provide national policies that would guide implementation of the Kenya National Qualifications Framework. In essence, actually, we say that the National Qualifications Framework per se is one of the policy documents that we are implementing currently. Because like I earlier introduced it, I said already, it provides a well-articulated framework of 10 levels that shows what is expected of each and every level. But to implement this mega framework requires now specific policies to implement it and to ensure that it is achieved wholesomely as it is. Now, we have since developed a couple of policies, and allow me to say very gladly that a number of them are already on course with implementation. We have successfully developed what you call the recognition of prior learning. Let me start from there. And the recognition of prior learning policy came in to address a key challenge that this country had from time immemorial since we embraced education and training. That bit of not allowing for recognition of skills and competencies that are required from other contexts other than the formal education and training. In other words, we say any skill and competence that you obtain from informal and non-formal spaces, which of course we know that as a country we pride ourselves in what we refer to as a jua kali sector. And not just jua kali. Right now we're also looking at the professional spaces. There's a lot that people are taking advantage of. So that if you are not in a TVET institution, you're not in a university, you are not in any form of a college, you're out there in the industry, you're learning. Now we have a mechanism in place where our institutions will be able to identify that skill that you have. They will be able to subject you to an assessment. And if you qualify, you will be given a certificate. Now, that is what we're referring to as recognition of prior learning. Grateful to our government because the recognition of prior learning policy was developed and implemented and launched in March, 24th of March precisely, last year, 2024. And since then, it is on course with implementation. It is not those kind of policies that are developed and kept to gather dust. Luckily, even by the time that we were rolling it out for implementation and for launching, prior to the rollout, we had done a lot of intensive piloting with our already established qualifications awarding institutions. Precisely, we had National Industrial Training Authority, which has been doing some form of recognition of prior learning because they've been looking at apprentices and assessing them. They just made sure that they formalized it to cover that component that required assessment through RPL, but also our national polytechnics, like Nyeri National Polytechnic, Kitale, Kisii, Coast, a number of them, they already undertook assessment. And other than the piloting stage now, we're already on course now with assessment of that. Of course, being very careful, of course, knowing that our people can be very creative, and anyone would like a certificate. So there's also very watertight process to ensure this quality assurance in the entire process, so that only deserving cases, people who actually demonstrate that they have a skill, are certified. They're assessed and certified through recognition of prior learning.
Maybe so far, how many people have applied for the recognition of prior learning? And also the emerging opportunities for the youth, like content creation. Will it reach a time whereby this content creation will be recognized as a career, and RPL be issued to those who shoot their videos, shoot their content and put out there for the people over the internet?
Yeah, sure, Bernard. Let me start with statistics, first of all, where we are. Of course, there's a lot of massive interest for people to be awarded. Like I rightly said, we're a country that people are so keen to do with their hands. So we have many people who are prospective candidates for this recognition of prior learning. Currently, where we sit, we have over 7,000 people who have been certified in various skill areas. We're looking at those that have been certified by our national polytechnics. We're looking at those that have been certified also by National Industrial Training Authority. And currently, as we speak, we also have over 5,000 that are on course at various stages. We're also very careful not to just see the institution just pass through. So if you look at the RPL process of certification, assessment and certification as it is, these are very critical component of awareness creation. So that one would really have to understand you as a candidate, because you have that certain skill that you've acquired over time in your place of practice. What is it that you need to know about recognition of prior learning? How would you know, and how would we determine that actually you should be assessed through recognition of prior learning? And so it could be a lengthy process, depending also on the availability of that person. It could also be a short process, depending on how quickly you're able to provide what you have. Because in essence, we say recognition of prior learning brought in this bit of flexibility, something separate from formal education and training. So the flexibility part of it is very clear.
So what is the procedure? If a Juakali artisan in Gikomba market today wants a RPL certificate, how do they start?
If someone from wherever the industry, if they're coming from Gikomba or wherever, the very first thing, we want to link them up with what we call a qualification awarding institution. And that is why we normally insist that the very first step is awareness creation, because we're assuming that for one to come from Gikomba to express interest, that they want to be assessed, they've heard about it. And so that is the very first step of ensuring that people hear about RPL and they're able to distinguish it from formal education training, and they're able to know that we are not calling them to take them to class to teach them. They are being called to go to an assessment center to be assessed on what they have, to demonstrate that the learning outcomes for level 2, 3, or 4, one can actually demonstrate that they have. So what that person does is that they will be directed to an accredited institution that is mandated to assess and certify. In this context, if it is a TVET space, and allow me to emphasize on TVET, because seeing that we are at initial stages of implementing this policy, we also realize that it is important to also be careful, even in terms of building up to higher levels. So currently, you would realize that we focused on the lower levels. For instance, we haven't gone beyond level 6, which is a diploma, and majority are actually in lower levels, level 3, 4, 5, even prior to diploma, which is okay and perfect for us, because these are mainly people who have probably been denied a chance for them to progress, get into education system and progress. Because if one is probably a diploma, it means in a way, maybe they already had a craft certificate of some sort. So this person goes to a qualification awarding institution, and they will be guided on whether they would go to an assessment center. In as much as I say that it is a qualification awarding institution that is legally mandated to train and issue, to assess and issue a certificate, we also realize that we may not necessarily have, QAIs, in short, qualification auditing institutions across the country, but we also have assessment centers. And these include even the industry itself. That is the extent of flexibility that we have. So a national polytechnic, for instance, would liaise with a certain industry that is well equipped, and one can actually be assessed from where they work. That is the beauty of it, because you'll just go with the expectation for that particular level, say it's level 5. Yes. What is expected of this person to demonstrate? Maybe it's dressmaking. So you will go with those expectations, and you will have people who have already well versed, they've been trained. We call them RPL practitioners. And these are people who are already well trained in terms of what is expected of this process, distinguishing it again from the formal training, so that they will not subject this person to just knowing the theory, and just recollecting and memorizing the theory. But it is the doing part of it. It is about the skill that this person can demonstrate. And so we would have someone who understands the context, the learning outcomes, as far as the curricula of that level is concerned. Would have someone also from the industry per se, because you also want to ensure that this person are assessed with the level of the currency of that particular skill as much as possible. So we wouldn't want someone who will probably assess with the prior knowledge of like 5-10 years ago, yet we know how fast it has to be very current. So someone from the industry becomes part of the assessors, and also someone now who is privy of the RPL process.
What steps have you taken to make sure that all this process is watertight and free from corruption?
Right. Thank you, Bernard. And that is where quality assurance comes in. And we have quality assurance implemented at various levels. I did say that for the Kenya National Qualifications Authority, we provide the policy framework. So in coordination, in collaboration with other players, we develop the national policy. And we also ensure that it is effectively implemented. So the quality assurance process, what does it entail? We work with the subsector regulators. When I talk about the assessment, the institutions that are mandated to assess and certify, say a national polytechnic, first of all, it would have to be accredited by the authority within the sub-framework, TVET authority. It would have to be registered also by the Kenya National Qualification Authority, certifying that actually it has followed the due process for it even to be allowed, not just to offer education and training within the formal context, but also to undertake recognition of prior learning. And how we've come in to assist is that other than the the RPL policy itself, we have also developed instruments to unpack, to guide effective implementation of this policy. A number of them. We have standards and guidelines. Guidelines for each and every player in this process, because understanding its uniqueness and the newness within the space. So we have a guide for qualifications awarding institutions. We have standards and guidelines for even subsector regulators, including ourselves as KNQA. What is our role? Including TVET Authority, Commission, NITA, TVET CDAC, what is their role? Including qualification awarding institution. What exactly is required of them, including even the candidates themselves. So when a candidate presents themselves to an institution, they will actually be guided, and harmoniously in a standardized manner, because these documents have been given to the institutions so that now they unpack it, because one of the requirements for them to be registered is to have an institutional policy, for them to show how ready are they now to employ these. Yes.
So another question is, Kenya National Qualifications Authority, are you only based in Nairobi, or do you have regional presence?
Thank you. Currently, Bernard, we are based in Nairobi. But of course, as now you very well understand our mandate, we would even be valid to even have a branch outside the country, looking at our mandate. But of course, first of all, looking locally, we would endeavor to even have establishments outside Nairobi. However, within where and how we're operating now, this is not limiting, because we are still able to utilize the platforms that are there. we are one institution that has really gone digital in terms of our services. For instance, when you talk about alignment, validation, and recognition of qualifications, one does not have to come all the way from Garissa to come to Nairobi. You don't have to come all the way from Congo to come to Nairobi. Our system are very easy. Just getting there, and you will be able to go through the entire process right from applying until even getting that certificate of recognition or alignment into the framework. Everything is digitalized. And we look at that because, again, I said our key mandate, ultimately, even in doing all these developing policies and ensuring the qualification system is standardized and harmonized, ultimately, we want to achieve for this country a national qualifications database. And that means that centrally, we shall be able to have your records if we do not have them now, because we're already seeing a lot of response from a number of our institutions. Centrally, we shall have we call them learner achievements. My learner achievements, right from the certificate that I acquired first to what I have my doctorate. And if I'll be able to do another one, it will still be there. So that if anyone would want to query credibility, authenticity of my certificate, you don't necessarily have to go to Nyeri National Polytechnic, to go to my primary school, to go to NEC, to go to my university. Centrally, we have it at KNQA. And of course, this will address this issue of fake and fraudulent certificates.
From the way you speak, the agency has a lot of authority.
Absolutely.
Your decisions, are they final? Are they binding? Can someone appeal? Kenyans they really love litigation.
Yeah.
So can someone say, I went to KNQA and my qualification was not recognized or was not validated? Maybe can they seek justice in courts elsewhere?
Absolutely, Bernard. We allow for fair administrative justice because, of course, we're bound by the Constitution, and it is a right. And being a right, of course, that's the fairest way to deal with it. And so since it is a decision that is being made, it is also subject to being queried. So there's a mechanism in place. For instance, if one is coming with a qualification and you want to get its authentication or mapped into the framework, and you think that we have placed it at level 6, according to you, you think it should be at level 7. So there's a mechanism in place. Again, especially since I did say that our processes are highly digitalized, there's still a way in which you would request, you would make that appeal. And if again still you are not satisfied, one is still allowed to go to the next level. And we normally work now with the rest of the players to see to it that we are able to address this. But we've not really seen a lot of contestation because the processes are really well clear. Yes. And we ensure that one really understands, especially when it comes to comparability of qualifications, because that is where people really come in. We ensure that you're able to see what is it that informs that a diploma, for instance, called a diploma by a certain body, say like Association of Business Executives. In our case, we might probably take their diploma level 1 to craft certificate. What are the reasons? There are bases for that. So yes, to answer your question straightforward, we have a mechanism in place for appeals, and we give people opportunity to really just express themselves, and we relook at it. Yes.
There is one question you did not answer about in the emerging careers, like you find most of the youth nowadays, they are engaged in generating online content. Others are doing photography in towns. Maybe going forward, will you consider that as in RPL process? Can they get a certification that such and such person has been doing photography for the last 5 years, and this is their certificate? Is it possible?
Absolutely, Bennett. That is possible. In fact, recognition of prior learning is not limited to just specific skill. It is not just for Juakali. In any case, even someone who's doing photography can still refer to themselves as Juakali. I might be doing something, I'd say I am still hustling as a Juakali. That is the openness, the extent of the openness of recognition of prior learning. And the beauty of it is that it does not necessarily have to or allow for just certification where one meets what we call full qualification. A full qualification means looking at the learning outcomes, for instance, for a level 5 or a level 4 or a level 6, which is a diploma. If you do not meet those specifications, recognition of prior learning does not consider people as failures. And that is one, again, a key advantage to this and an add-on to our current education and training system, because you're saying even the reason as to why we're embracing CBC, competency-based also education and training, is knowing that as long as I have a skill and a competence, I am not a fool. You can't say that I have failed, because you will say that I have failed, and I would surprise you later on that I am doing so well in the industry because of that skill and a competence that I have. So if at the point where you are taking yourself to an institution to be assessed, and you probably did not meet the specific requirements, say for level 3, either the assessors would see whether do you meet for level 2. You would be assessed at that. There's also an alternative of a part qualification and clear guidance on what is it that you would need to build onto your profile so that you meet the requirements for level, that full level. So it is very encouraging, and that is why you find that people are so very much for it, because it is really giving hope to many people who felt that the system, which is good, and we appreciate the formal education and training has really built so many of us, but they feel that a number of people have been left out of the system because of that, because I cannot really show that I meet the requirements for level 7. Why do you deny me then for the lower ones? So just let me know what is the skill gap that is provided for in the recognition of prior learning process. But allow me to say, in addition to RPL, a very critical add-on that is already coming up is what you're calling micro-credentials policy. And this again speaks exactly to what I can see what is in your mind. They're short, very short courses that are so really acknowledged and applicable and appropriate to the labor market. For instance, there's a lot that is happening in the digital space. And someone will tell you that there's a lot that I'm just seated in my house and I am doing a lot of work because of utilizing a certain skill that I have. Now, we are looking at people who've probably pursued a certain, we're calling it a micro credential. It may not even form even to be a part qualification, because for RPL, we look at it building someone up so that ultimately can be a full qualification and allow them not just to get maybe decent employment from getting a certificate, but also allowing them to move to formal education and training and learn. We're also looking at this person who is able to really learn so much about AI. This person who is able so much to know about green skills and other credentials. How do we recognize that and ensure that the national qualifications framework also is able to map them and recognize? Because we also know that as they come up, there will also be many versions, some that are credible and others not credible. So we also need to have a way of really ensuring credibility of those emerging issues. And we appreciate the space we currently are, the volatility and the pace. Yes.
My final question would be, as we wind up this interview, there are many reforms currently going on in the education sector. Maybe how do you see this organization maybe 5 years from now? And maybe what are the achievements that you've achieved so far as we wind up?
Excellent. Thank you so much again, Bernard, for that question. We appreciate the reforms that are there. And of course, like I began by saying that even the National Qualifications Authority itself was established through reforms process that were there. And so we appreciate and believe that even the current reforms that are going on, it is because of the realization that we also need to move with the times and see how do we even become more current to address the pressing issues that we have. So we are really hopeful and very positive that the reforms, like I've rightly said, the National Qualification Authority in implementation of the framework is very keen to embrace these issues that are currently emerging in the space. Because when we talk about credibility of qualification, it also has to speak to what is really current, what is the labor market demanding, what are the employers demanding, are those certificates also visible to them? Have we registered them in the database? And so to spell out, number one, we are really looking at ensuring that that national qualification database is fully established. And so that if anyone would want to query or even understand the kind of qualification and the various skill areas that maybe we have focused in as a country vis-a-vis what is required, they are centrally able to get that. And so we see that a lot of people, and not just nationally, but also globally, would be able to access that. And what that builds is also visibility of our qualifications. Currently, there's a lot that this government is doing in terms of allowing people to get opportunities outside. Our youth specifically very active with the qualifications that they have. We want to ensure that the framework is making those qualifications visible, it's making them portable, that they can go with them and recognized as for the level for which you've acquired, even acknowledged in that country, and also allowing mobility of skills and labor. But allow me also, Bernard, to say again that currently where we are at, we pride ourselves as the Kenya National Qualifications Authority because we are a benchmark of many other countries that are at various stages of developing their national qualifications framework. They are envious of where we are as a country because they can see the kind of harmony and standardization that the national qualification framework has brought to this country. As we speak, we're already working with IGAD member state countries. We're developing what we call the IGAD qualification framework. And again, Kenya is spearheading this. The only country that maybe somewhere would be Ethiopia. We are helping them because these are the same queries that we're getting. People from those countries coming to see how we compare. They also want to have their own to help their country as well. Within the continent as well, they have an umbrella called the Africa Continental Qualifications Framework. Again, Kenya together, that is the Kenya National Qualification Authority, together with South Africa Qualifications Authority. Again, we are at the lead, guiding these over 40 countries to see how we can reference, we can compare, we can cross-reference our qualification. And so in the near future, we believe that we shall have achieved all things that we have as a vision for our national space and also the vision for the regional and continental space. Thank you, Bernard.
Thank you so much for having us at the Kenya National Qualifications Authority.
Thank you so much.
Chitab Kalenjin, noto ko CEO anan ofisa neo nebo kibagengeitab Kenya National Qualifications Authority, Dr. Alice Kandie, ne kakong'alalwech eng koindo kotinygei ak tetutik cheterter choto che tesetai kosuldoe mising ko kotinygei ak kanabtaitab sekta noto nebo somanet eng emetab Kenya. Ko kainenyu ko Bernard Koech, amagun kit age tugul nemie, testai ikere Kass TV amu kimnotet naet.